Hello, everyone. My name is Athena Cabrera, and today I'm presenting my senior capstone, Ending Rape Kit Backlogs to Protect Victims of Sexual Violence. To start off, a rape kit backlog is all the rape kit evidence sitting in storage waiting to be tested. So this counts for untested evidence and unsubmitted evidence. The reason we need to reduce the rape kit backlog is think of all the victims waiting to hear their case being closed, waiting for their evidence to be tested to see what will happen. They're trying to solve their own case and they need help from law enforcement to do this. So, to reduce the rape kit backlog would mean we'd be helping these victims with their unsolved trauma, with their feeling of injustice towards the criminal justice system. So, throughout this presentation, I'll be giving a lot of background on rape kit backlogs, why there are rape kit backlogs, law enforcement's views towards, victims of sexual violence, the inefficiency we have in laboratories and evidence storages, and also some solutions or policies that can help to reduce the rape kit backlog. So starting off with some history, there was no standard for when a rape kit became part of the backlog. Was it after 30 days in storage, 60 days, 90 days? No one really knew. And besides that, there were no protocols to rape kit testing. There was no procedures on the collection of evidence and how to test it. Another thing to know is there's no national number. Without standardization, there's no way to tell how many rape kits we had waiting to be tested. And there is an estimation about 400,000 rape kits that are still part of the backlog within our nation. So with women's marches and protests in the 70s and 80s, we finally got a standardization to rape kit testing and more rights to help victims of sexual violence. Now, just because we've started to have standardization and protocols doesn't mean the fight is over. There's still a lot we can do to reduce the rape kit backlog. So some reasons for why we have a rape kit backlog, there were two studies. The first one was in Detroit. Detroit had about 11,000 unsubmitted rape kits evidence. And so to figure out why this evidence wasn't being tested or submitted, they went to the police departments to figure out what was going on. So some reasons rape kit evidence wasn't tested was if there was a suspect or conviction, they figured, oh, we already have our guy, no need to test it. Or if they didn't have a suspect or no need for conviction, they thought there was no point in testing the evidence because they clearly didn't have a clue of who it was, which doesn't make sense when you think about it. Another reason are there weren't enough resources available, not enough funding or equipment to test the evidence. And another big factor is how law enforcement views victims of sexual violence, how there is an injustice to not help them. The second study is the Washington study. There was a questionnaire given out to police officers. And mainly the big issue again is lack of funding, lack of resources to test this evidence. And another thing law enforcement wasn't utilizing was CODIS. CODIS is this DNA database that can help link DNA to suspects, link cases together. But without putting this evidence into CODIS, there's no way they can find a suspect or even solve cold cases. So it's always important that they utilize CODIS to help solve cases. So a big factor is how law enforcement has negative stereotypes towards victims of sexual violence. Now, these victims, they're reliving through their trauma. When they're getting the evidence collected off them, having to go to interview, it's a lot for them. So when law enforcement is treating them as whores or prostitutes, questioning their claim, questioning their legitimacy as a victim, claiming if they don't pick up a phone call or if they don't go to a meeting with the officer, they're uncooperative, they're not helping out the investigation. So it's almost like victims have to try to solve their own case while constantly being bombarded with toxic energy from law enforcement. And to be treated that way is not right. And law enforcement not taking these victims seriously is what is allowing the rape kit backlog to continue. All this lack of trust, and moving forward, it needs to change. So lastly, another big thing is inefficient laboratories and resources. By not having enough funding, you don't have enough equipment or staffing. So all this evidence is piling up because there's not enough equipment or people to test it. And with storage issues, evidence can't sustain forever. They can't sit in storage forever. Over time, the evidence will degrade and you will lose that quality of evidence. There won't be things that you can test anymore. You'll lose it. And with improper temperature conditions within storages, you can also lose evidence. For example, blood and urine, they have to pertain in a certain temperature, but if you're constantly moving evidence or your storages are having improper temperature controls, again, you're going to lose this evidence and lose that quality. And when you lose that, again, victims won't get their answers. They'll still be waiting. They won't actually know if their case will ever be solved, if the person that harmed them will ever be captured, which at the end of the day is not okay. So funding, again, very important. It would definitely help with reducing the rape kit backlog. So finally, here are some solutions that can help reduce the rape kit backlog. The first one is the techno-optimism approach. This is all about advancing technology. It's all about getting more funding and providing more equipment and staffing for these labs so they can be able to test this evidence and get it out there and help these victims. The second one is the Detroit Sexual Assault Kit Action approach. And this is all about going within each department, determining what factors are leading to the rape kit backlog. And so within each department, you can find solutions to fix it. So for example, if they have a lot of negative stereotypes they want to weed out of their police department, they could do more empathy training or have more skill labs on how to interview victims, how to speak with victims, something like that. And lastly is the sexual assault nurse examiner's business plan. This is all about providing hospitals with enough sexual assault nurses, having more personnel, having more hours trained so they can give better quality care to these victims, to be able to collect the evidence better, better treatment for victims overall, and to get that evidence tested because hospitals do end up holding some of the evidence at times when storages are full. So this can all help victims of sexual violence. So in conclusion, yes, we need to prioritize victims of sexual violence. We know there are ways to reduce the rape kit backlog. If everyone in our nation can help provide more funding, if police departments can guarantee more training and more empathy skills to helping victims of sexual violence, there are ways to reduce the rape kit backlog and give these victims their answers. So lastly, I just want to say, educate others, talk to people about this, let it still be known. And as long as we keep talking and fighting, we can help victims of sexual violence. Thank you.